We have been on a journey. We have been on a journey this day. We have been on a journey throughout the season of Lent, so I am going to stick to the point this morning, at this moment in time, as we are here in chapter 14, where things are getting real. Things are getting heavy. Jesus is feeling the weight of what he knows is to come. We experience that here in the garden as Jesus prays fervently, as he prays in the midst of knowing, of proclaiming to his earliest followers, his closest followers and friends, that they are going to betray him, that they are going to deny him, that they are going to desert him. He takes 3 of them with him. He goes to pray, to center himself in a very, very difficult time and place. He's in Jerusalem on the Passover, the celebration, the festival that highlighted God's liberating power through the Exodus. God's victory over an oppressive regime in the midst of his time when the Roman empires weighed heavily on those in Jerusalem and the surrounding area. Jesus goes to the garden to pray because he has a deep understanding of what's going to happen. And it's getting to him. Even to Jesus, it's getting to him. If this cup can pass from me, if I don't have to face these challenges, if I don't have to face my own death, which he understands is imminent, if this doesn't have to happen, please, God. But not my way. It's not about what just I want, what I am comfortable with, what makes me feel good. God, it's about you. It's about your way. Jesus gives us this clarity on what it means to follow him in the midst of the denials, the betrayals, the desertions, people falling asleep. He gives us this clear statement. It's about what God wants. It's about following in the ways of God, aligning our ways ever more fully with God's ways. And that way is the way of justice, right? It's the way of peace. That way resists oppression, resists violence, resists exploitation. And like I said, he knows, and we've heard it again and again and again in chapter 8, in chapter 9, in chapter 10, and so have his disciples. They've heard, he understands that there is a risk. There is a true, imminent risk to his own life. He proclaims, I am going to die, but I will be raised. He also proclaims the trust, the faith that God's love will win out, that God's desire for justice and liberation will conquer any violence, any oppression, any exploitation that we might encounter in this world. And each time, if you'll recall, as we have been journeying through Mark, each time he proclaims this message to his disciples, to his followers, they push back. They completely don't get it. Maybe it's not that they don't get it, it's that they don't want to accept it. Peter pushes back, rebukes Jesus, if you'll recall. The disciples hear Jesus saying that the Son of Man is going to be handed over to traitors, is going to suffer, is going to die, and going to be raised. And then the disciples on the way, they start having this conversation about who's the greatest. The third time he mentions this, a couple of those faithful three, James and John, or maybe it was just the students in the classroom that really needed extra attention in addition to Peter. James and John are saying, hey, can you put us at your right and at your left when you come in your glory? They don't get it. They don't want to follow in that way. They don't want to believe that death, that risk, that danger comes along with following that path for justice. And I find myself to be right there with them. I feel called to do justice. I talk about it all the time, right? Words are easy sometimes. Depends who's listening. And we don't know who's listening all the time. Words can be easier, but what about our actions? And what about what we'll put out with our words, with our images, with our names? I have been afraid in this time and in this place as people have been acting up and speaking up to resist oppression and exploitation, where we see it, where we experience it in our time, in our country today. I have been afraid for myself, but I have also been afraid for my family and the repercussions. That could come from me speaking out, from me showing up. And yet, that is the call. That is the invitation. That is the way. And even in the midst of that fear, I find hope. I experience inspiration. Right here in the Gospels, right here in Mark. I am lifted and I experience hope because Jesus never gives up on these guys. He never gives up on these people who just don't want to accept it. He doesn't leave them. They may leave him, but he will not leave them. God will never leave us. We may try to run away from the divine, but the Spirit will remain with us. I get hope because these disciples, even Peter, James, and John, who we get by name pushing back, they change. Peter doesn't end with the denial of Jesus, and then we never hear of him again. We hear about Peter again and again and again because he became very active. He was a leader in the early church. He proclaimed openly his faith, his trust in who Jesus was and what he was about, the justice and the peace and the community that Jesus was trying to build. Peter continued on that journey. He dusted himself off after being rolling around in the dust, whatever it was he was doing, after taking his own little venture in the denial realm, in the sleeping realm. He got up. He woke up. And he acted and he spoke. And because of that, because they, those earliest followers, didn't stop at denial, didn't stop at desertion, didn't stop at sleep, we're here. We are here today because they continued on the journey. I am filled with hope. And I am inspired to continue to speak and to continue to act by the hundreds of people who gathered at the courthouse yesterday, right here in Bloomington, to resist violence, oppression, and exploitation in our midst today, and dared to take to the streets to commit to moving on a path, living a way of justice and liberation and peace. And that we were joined by a much broader cloud of witness, by millions throughout this country and even around the globe. Friends, that gives me courage. That gives me hope. That provides me with inspiration to join that peaceful procession, to live that peaceful procession, even in the midst of challenge, in the midst of fear, in the midst of danger. We just offered our fears to the divine. We thought about what is it that keeps us from taking action, from speaking out. So I want to give you a moment to consider a different question. What is it that gives you hope? What is it that inspires you? What is it that empowers you and gives you the courage to speak up, to act, to join that procession for justice, for peace, for liberation, even in the midst of the risk that comes with it? Friends, I will give you now a moment to begin reflecting. Feel free to write down your inspiration on your bulletin and take that home with you. Don't write it down on those Holden evening prayer booklets, because you aren't taking those home with you, remember. Write it down and keep that with you. Your fear has been dissolved, but take your inspiration with you. Take your hope with you. Take your courage with you. Friends, let us be together now. For a moment of reflection, meditation, and prayer, let us be together now for a moment of pause.